or thinking that you need to add stuff to fix your soil. So look, that's just a little bit about me, where I'm at with soil. So over to you, Hugo.
Yeah, look, I won't dwell on the past. I've always, since the age of 6, I've been involved with agriculture right through, not non-stop. And I was blessed by being naughty. Now that might sound funny, but it had me look at things differently. And no matter what sort of correction my parents or headmaster or teachers would try to do, it didn't work, which is quite a blessing, really. And I was a sort of person that would obviously look at odd things or things that are different, and doing things that are different. And I think there's, but it all gets now, but I'm very strong in observation, obviously, because we used to have, when we had our poultry farm in the 50s, we would have occasional dead chook, or like maybe, and they got buried in the compost. You looked a bit sick. Us kids, when we were gathering our eggs 2 or 3 times a day, our chooks are outside as well. Any chook that looked a bit sick, we'd have to bring it home to that, and then she would use to put into sort of a special hospital pen. And my mother would give it special food, or whatever was grew in the garden, and she used to give them a vitamin mineral mix in their food. Well, the other chooks got it too, but I noted that we used to give a product called Vitamol, which was produced by the Nicholas Aspro people, and it was a fish emulsion. And we would have, like I said, very few chooks died. And you go to the neighbour's place who had about the same amount of chooks as we had, and he had this long path all the way down to his front door. And it was quite embarrassing for me when I'd go to his place, I'd see nothing like more than like chooks, dead chooks on the pathway. Each pen had about 100, 150 hens, and there's this row of these pens in a straight row, and they're on deep litter too. And so it made me think, it just always stuck in my mind, how come he had so many dead chooks and we didn't have any? So there's certain principles that stuck out, or those do stick out, and the curiosity. But the main thing is that I've learnt a lot to our field days, farmers coming into our store, and I don't want to repeat those things. And it gets down to some extreme basics. And the extreme basics is nature knows best. We are connected. We are known for what's given to the energy that goes out into the world is called the 0 point field. It's a scientific name, and it's called zero because zero is not naught. Zero is infinity, and infinity is in the universe. Now I'll jump to the next thing. It's a plant-driven system, and I'll cover that later. But when you are looking at what Helen, myself, and Ray, and whatever we produce, it gets back to another principle. It's not really a principle, it can be a bit hurtful, but we learnt when we're doing our promotion, when we're selling when we had a fertilizer business, and it was what's in it for me, and what's in it for me drives us. So this whole conversation, what are we having now with you, what's in it for you? And just keep that in mind, because that's going to be the driving point. And it's worth taking a note of the principles that we come up with. And Ray, is it okay if I jump to the end rather than the beginning?
Yeah, absolutely. You're in control here. And I just want to shout out what Gerhard said about we are passengers on nature's bus. I think that's a really good little statement in the chat.
Didn't hear that.
I just said that Gerhard said that we are passengers on nature's bus in the chat. I just wanted to call that out. But yeah, carry on. Do as you please.
Let's say hi to Gerhard, because he was a very early partner with what we were doing.
Yeah, early partner with us back in 1988, I think.
Selling and making fish and seaweed fertilizers. That's what we ended up selling the other business. And going into that business where we met Gerhard, who has also done that track. We've had many, many, many happy times together with you, Gerhard. And you want, oh, here I am thinking of okay.
Hello, Hugo.
Right. This thing here, it's called the autumn. It's called From the Ground Up. It's from Vic No-Till. Okay. Now I'm going to read it. I'll talk about it. Is this that it's a group that is very similar to the Birchip cropping trials, which they do trials up there on what's called cricket pitch type trials and out in the field as well. And it's known, we'll get back to plants drive the system, because on these cricket pitch trials, what has been said, like by this other fellow, get names, come to lose my mind, Sir Albert Howard in the Agricultural Testament. He makes it very clear that the cricket pitch way of doing things, we do a trial on a cricket pitch size, which is 60 feet by maybe 6 feet, something like that, that it's not right, because the microbes in the soil travel, they could be feeding the soil from another patch, or from another detrimental area, or from a good area. And so the interesting thing is that these are row crop farmers, where they've been told a whole lot of industrial nonsense, and which is like weeds are bad. Weeds kill the system. Weeds got to be exterminated. Got to have got to kill the weeds during the summer. And some farmers have to spray like 3 times during the summer months so the weeds don't grow. Now, the interesting thing about this publication is that they've made it's been highly scripted, although it's been sort of directed to 2 particular farms. And what they've are covering there is that these farmers, the young fellows who got into the Vic No-Till, which is a row crop cereal type of outfit, as it mentions in this book, in this publication of about 11 pages, that they're encouraged to go into bringing livestock back into their systems. About 20, 30 years ago, our Department of Agriculture said, no, we've got to specialise. We rip up the fences, close your dams, get rid of the sheep, get rid of the cattle, mainly the sheep, and just concentrate on what you're good at, which is growing cereal crops. Now, these young fellows who've come back into the thing, they've been instructed now to go bring back the sheep, bring back the cattle. And what's also said in this particular thing is these farmers didn't have cattle. So what they've done now is another principle: partner up with someone who has got the cattle. They're bringing the cattle onto the property. And the other thing, getting back to plants drive the system, they're talking about growing cover crops. And the interesting thing about cover crops is this, that, and I'll jump to the next thing. In this book here, Phil Callahan's book, he refers to the plant as an antenna to the cosmos. Now, that might sound so wacky, but it's not. The plants draw nutrients from the cosmos or the atmosphere, call it what you like, or from the clouds, whatever it is. And where does the cosmos finish? Just at the cloud level, or does it go further out? Okay, so he made it very clear that, and he's got diagrams of how, and I won't show them diagrams of how different tests have been done by putting a hunk of granite in a pot that attracted cosmic energy to that granite, so the plants in that pot grew better. So it's a plant-driven system. Getting back to here, because it's a plant-driven system, they mentioned something really, really spooky. It's called syntropic farming. Now, that is so far from row crops, so far from bare earth, so far from monoculture. It is scary for anyone who's still into row crops and poisoning the soil. So getting back to principles, you want to write down your own personal principles, and that could hurt a little bit because we are money driven, we are ego driven. I used to have flashy cars till I realized that I was paying huge amount of money on servicing the thing. You know, I'd be paying around, up to $1,000 for servicing my Range Rover. Now we've got a Subaru, which the maximum it cost me $300 10 years later. So your ego can really, well, if you like, money's there to be having fun with, but I think we've got to create principles. And as Gary McDougall said in the filming that we did, which was the series called
Meeting the Challenge for Change.
Meeting the Challenge of Change.
With Christine Jones.
Gary McDougall is an RCS consultant, said we must agree on principles. And the principles we've got to agree on, it's a plant-driven system. It's a soil life-driven system. And the more variety of plants that we've got growing, they are drawing different nutrients from the atmosphere. And you might think that's funny. And I'll tell you a story that I was driving along in a car in a cab, and South African on the right-hand side, he's a driver, and in the back seat there's a respected consultant. And I said to him, it's a plant-driven system, and I could hear some mutter like something like that. And I got cross straight away, and I said, well, and I thought, how can I make a difference to the fellow? And instantly I said, well, when you spray a crop with glyphosate, where do you think that glyphosate goes? I said, it enters the plant. It comes from the atmosphere. It comes from the above the ground. It goes into the root, and it stays in the root. And he shut up. And then the South African sort of said we talked about something else. We talked about prize bulls, etc. And he said, yeah, this business having a prize bull in South Africa, they worked out it doesn't work. The big bulls fight each other while the other bull gets on with having a good time, and he's the one who's producing the high quality animals in the herd, and not the big bulls that are having a good ego match. So it still gets back to principles, and we can just keep talking about these principles. That the more we anchor our personal lives on principles, the more we look at farming and principles, then we're going to make a difference. And there's a lot of industry that jumps on paid industry that jumps on things like, making milk into argument, whatever the word is, as a health hazard, where fresh milk is a health food. Now, industries has created that you're not allowed to sell fresh food. It's a $60,000 fine to the farmer who sells it, and it's such a fine for a person who buys it. And on it goes, where industry, we've got to look at industry and sort of think, well, what industry can we trust? What industry is out there to make money? And it gets back to pathogens too. When we're in the fertilizer business, natural fertilizer business, they had problems with Phytophthora in chestnuts. They had problems in root-eating nematodes in carnations, and to the point that they couldn't grow these carnations anymore.
Except in polystyrene
Except
boxes.
when one farmer would just grow them in polystyrene boxes. It's not the pathogens problem. Pathogens are there. It's nature's clean-up gang. And the same thing is with viruses, which we're concentrating on the things to the point that, like in hospitals have become a health hazard. My sister was in hospital. She was asked to get out of there in 2 days because it could affect her, the operation she had. Well, we've got to look at science where it works, and look at industry, where industry is trying to tell us a particular virus is bad for us and not giving us the facts. And I think that's another thing we've got to look at. Facts. Get the facts, get the real facts, and look deeper into the facts. You know, there's some 10 to the power of 30 viruses in the world, and here we are going to fight 2 of them. And we've got to look at the facts. And one factor we're not being told, look after your immune system. As Pat Cash recently said in an interview he had on his website, on his, what do you call it? His...
it was on a video.
Yeah, video. No, it's on his Facebook. He said, he made it very clear that these super fit tennis players, why do they need a vaccine? He said, they don't need it. He said, I'm not getting a vaccine. I eat organic food. I go to the gym and I do this, etc. I don't need a vaccine. And so the thing is this, that we're not told the facts. And that the more people learn the facts and get back to basic principles, the world's going to be a better place. Farming is going to be a better place. And another wonderful thing that was learnt back in the Nutrisoil days, when we went to Nutrisoil, where they had about 200 farmers, they all got together on day 2 on how to change things, where to move from now. And one of the key points that came up was do no harm. And that's very, very powerful. Do no harm. Don't do any harm to yourself. Don't do any harm to your family. Don't do any harm to the nature. Don't do any harm to the ecology. Do no harm.
So that also comes up from the fact when we were out at the field days trying to get this message out, we met so many farmers who really could not get their head around the fact that they needed to start looking at doing no harm, because everyone said, oh, but I need well, particularly glyphosate, actually. And even when we were filming Arden Anderson recently, people were saying, well, what am I going to use if I don't use that? And Arden got really cross and said, well, what the hell do you think farmers were doing 50 years ago? There wasn't any glyphosate. You know, like, get it in your head. You've been led a furphy, really, down a totally different track. And to a credit of one avocado grower, he came back the next day and he said, I'm never using any poisonous chemical ever again on my farm. He got the point. But so many people don't get the point or can't make that change quickly. And I think it's, as Hugo's saying, if you have the principle that you know if you're using chemical toxins now, are you going to start understanding the damage they are doing to your soil? Because they're not the future. It's not creating a living soil, which is your future. Look at, well, what are you going to do? What's your principle? And start making that pathway to getting there so you are producing healthy food. And once your soil's really functioning, it's so easy and so much less stress. You're not getting sick and things start ticking along because, as Hugo said, nature takes over. But what I was going to say, we were out of that, and I just brought this here because when we started Farming Secrets, we started what's called Walk the Talks, and we ended up doing over 100 of those things. And we had a club where we used some that you get where we sent out these monthly. And so over 10 years, we did a film every month. We found farmers who were following principles that we thought other farmers should know. And that was why we started Farming Secrets. It was so hard to get farmers to start stepping back from what they'd been taught at the uni and things like that, not realising the university actually left out biology, very good at physics and chemistry about this all, but basically farmers at that stage didn't have a strong knowledge of how the soil functioned. And Gerhard actually brought Elaine Ingham out, or sponsored her to come out. That's when we learned a hell of a lot about the soil and the importance of the soil. And we came up with 10 must-dos, which are on our website now. A long time ago, we realised farmers, a lot of the farmers we visited, even these leading farmers, never got up their tractor to look at whether their soil even had anything in it, and a lot had soil like concrete. So we brought out 7 steps for healthy soil, which is your kids can do. It's fun, looking at how a soil functions in just by observation. Then we brought out what we called the 10 must-dos, which were things like ground cover, 100% ground cover. Like you still drive around, you see bare paddocks from cropping time right through to sowing time. Well, what's going on? What are you doing to your soil then? It's like lying out in the sun up in Queensland for 3 months getting baked. So the 10 must-dos are on our website. Ray can probably indicate where you can get them. They are principles. So I really invite all of you, if you haven't seen them, to have a look at them. And if you question them, send us an email, or if you've got another one, we can grow a few more. So it's an open book there to keep looking at what are the basic things you should do on your with your farm or your garden or anything. And we came down with 3 basic must-dos were soil cover, diversity, and I can't remember.
Good. Some people can invent their own.
So there you go. I think it was not using minimal soil disturbance. That was the 3rd one. Because of and it didn't really come out in that little video we showed you, the mycorrhizal fungi, which can go for kilometres in your soil collecting nutrients. So that were the 3: cover, diversity, and minimal disturbance. So even if you just do that as your 3 things you're going to aim for, it's brilliant.
Ray, another thing I'd like to bring up, it's not a principle, well, I think we should label it as a principle, is that even very big outfits like JBS, the big abattoirs, are wanting transparency. And they've got 5 pillars, which includes looking after, I think it looks after the environment, but the cattle or the sheep are not to be grain fed, are not to be fed like, etc. That's JBS, a ginormous outfit. And with those icons, what do they call them? Those things you have there? No, you know, Ray, what those things are. What you do when you go and
QR code.
QR codes. With QR codes, you can go back to the farm. And this is what's very clear, that 2 great farmers who farm so successfully that they have time to go and talk to people, go into other countries. Gabe Brown and Joel Salatin, why I bring them up, they've got their farms going like clockwork. They sell all their produce directly, and their farms are totally transparent. Anyone can come onto their farms anytime, and they can have a tour or inspect the farm. Well, I'm not too sure if every farmer can do that, because they could be hiding something in the shed, or they could be a bit embarrassed that about something. And look, I'm not like, it's not, this talk's not about bad farmers and good farmers. It's about getting principles right, personal principles, universal principles, and applying them. And it's one of the principles that's been currently farmers are battling with, using glyphosate and or poisons. And when in the book Chemical Crisis, if you want the book, we'll supply to you. This lady who did a talk about they wanted a change in life, so moved north of Shepparton, bought 400 acres, And what they found, they went straight into a minefield. The kids were getting sick. The husband collapsed after delivering his wheat at the silo because he had so many poisons in his system. Now, she looked at this, and one of the things which she covered, Diana Crumpler, in her book, The Chemical Crisis, was that in the rural industry, Alzheimer's cancer is much greater in the rural area than what is in the cities. And that's because the poisons that the farmers are using, and the poisons are neurotoxic. Neurotoxic means they affect the brain affects organs. And this business of a little bit of poison is okay, well, it's not okay. And now it's accepted to desiccate wheat, which is a fancy, they've stopped using the word desiccate, they call it cropping. Desiccating the wheat means spray the stuff with Roundup so it ripens quickly at the right time, so the headers can be ordered to come into the crop. Well, now we're getting glyphosate in our wheat because it's a practice to desiccate or cropping the wheat, or it's been done for other crops, but potato growers did it many, many years ago because they didn't want their seed potatoes sold as seed potatoes, so they sprayed them out. And other potato growers, when they had to have a potato of a certain size and didn't want the potatoes to grow bigger, they sprayed them out. So the machinery could, for two reasons. One, they didn't want bigger potatoes. Secondly, they had to meet an order and they didn't want the tops of the potatoes tangling up the machinery. Great, put the poison into the potato.
So as you can see, we're very quite definite about how we see the future. And the future, fortunately, consumers are waking up and they're going to be leading the system. They are pushing now for good quality food, nutrient-dense food, and many, many farmers are responding. And it's miles easier to get access to what we would call good food. When we were in our 30s, it wasn't easy for us to find anywhere you could know where your food was coming from. There was a thing called the Green Line down in Camberwell. We live up in the hills. They delivered once a week organic food, but eventually organic grocery started up in about 20 minutes from us. Now it's relatively easy to get some organic food. So it is definitely an awakening, and it's just fantastic to see the awareness and people asking who grew this, where's it come from, and people are wanting to know how to measure their foods. And there are Nutrimeters and things coming out. They're very expensive at the moment. But,
not expensive.
Well, the Nutriment, no,
$400, is that expensive?
No, it's a couple of thousand.
Oh, sorry.
I'm talking about with all the chemicals and things. So, yeah, I think that probably enough from us.
Well, I could talk for 2 hours, Ray. So, and a good conversation too. It's not just talk, because I can give a lot of examples. I can give a lot of proof where farms have made a huge difference by change and just by correcting the soil. Just one thing that keeps coming to my mind. It's a bit comical, but it's not that comical. This farmer at Ballarat, he would spray fish fertilizer on his farm, and he'd send his cattle, his whatever that were, steers or whatever, steers or heifers to the market, and he would get a higher price than his neighbour or his mate who had a bigger animal, a heavier animal, and he was embarrassed by that. Well, and the reason is why he's getting a higher price. One is the animal looked better, but the main thing is the butcher knew that it would cut out better, and he'd be able to sell the product at a higher price, and he'd be able to sell it to his customers to a point where the customers want to come back.
Mm.
Transparency is key, Ray.
I know, and that's what I've loved and enjoyed hanging out in the hills. And for those who don't know, the hills is the Dandenong Ranges up at a suburb called The Patch. Ironically enough, it's called the Patch, and people sometimes think that that's just a made up name, but that's actually the suburb. And unless you know the area, you wouldn't know that. But it's a very beautiful space there. And I, get when COVID is not here, I get the privilege to go and hang out. And there's just bookcases and bookcases of DVDs like this. And, when I first came into the business and saw DVDs, I was like, what? People have DVDs still? And unfortunately with the remote internet, that was the way of communicating to the masses. And it was very interesting, and it's been really fun to digitalize and turn a lot of that into the online content that we now call the Soil Learning Center. And, as pro members and as members of the community, you all have access to all these walk the talks that Helen showed in that folder. What Helen was showing there was actually all the DVD covers that are filed into a folder. But if you go, we now call them virtual tours. So in the Soil Learning Center, I might just quickly show you. So that, and thanks Bella for sharing the 7 steps and the 10 must-dos. I think that's really, these are all the guides that have been there for a very long time, and they create a really good framework of where your principles and your line of thinking needs to be, in regards to values. I'm also curious if anyone has any questions, and we can take some questions. But if you go into the Soil Learning Center, and up the top, if you go to video type and you go to farm tours, it will just load up heaps and heaps of content. And if you keep scrolling through, you'll see that some of the cover artworks will say walk the talks. And so there's heaps of topics here. Mary Cole, just so much information. And this is like what kind of blew my mind when I first started coming into Farming Secrets and hearing the content and going, why is this not accessible to everyone? Like, we need to get this out there. And that's the mission that we've been on. And, from my point of view, being in the tech startup and space and, resilience in a business is a massive, massive thing. And seeing what Helen and Hugo have stuck with when there was no regenerative agriculture buzzword, when this all started. It was natural farming, it was biological farming, it was no chemical farming, and it wasn't embraced by the masses. And so I really, like you mentioned Nutrisoil and other companies that kind of launched and bringing, Elaine Ingham over from America, like this is all the resilience. I think what Farming Secrets also is a true testament to is the resilience to the business and to stick to a cause, whether it's trending or not, and that resilience is one of the principles that kind of naturally happens when you move to a regenerative farming technique. The wildlife, the biodiversity, the plant, it becomes more resilient. And that has been a very big pillar of Farming Secrets, because I'm sure, and Helen and Hugo, you could probably share some stories. There's probably times where you just think, it's too hard. No one's listening. We're going on deaf ears. We feel alone and isolated. Very easy. And I think, sometimes to throw in the towel, and maybe many going, how can I keep this mission alive into the next of sticking at it when others were calling it woo-woo and hippie stuff.
Yeah, our early days, we literally did have people coming up. We'd have a display and stock supplements too, because we didn't want animals to be an original mover and shaker in what was called the eco movement. But people had come up, we were ridiculed, of course, but that was the level people felt so cocksure that what we were doing was just, as you said, now people thought on way up the other end with spirituality and connecting other, but we're every massive move, and it's very, very exciting that we're now in a world where we are, each and one of us on this call, all of us are connected. And to know that that's just very, very intention, you can create anything. We're open about how we feel about all of that. And Ray, we used to have a saying on this is on the back of our DVDs, and right down the bottom is fall in love with your farm again, with Farming Secrets the other day. And we said, well, really, not farmers, it's fall in love with your soil again.
Two guests is, if you were the voice of the soil, what would you tell us on Earth? And like that call the other day, And this guy said, and it's like, I've walked on Peter's property, and what I'm seeing with my eyes far exceeds to catch up. You know, while we, you know, to seeing is believing, and when you have someone who is a true story, because the way that the so there's been a few. Jordan has been commenting quite a lot of different
sort of very, very bold. There was no like determination, you know, and I've loved that time. That's my bit. That's what I've got to say.
Thank you, Martin. And you've been a great supporter too. I know, Martin, about all sorts of things, and you'd share what you're hearing.
And I'd like to say something. Martin, you're doing great things because tens of thousands of hectares of...
We're making some progress. But the thing is nobody's written this book. We've got to write it ourselves, you know, and there's a bit of heartache and pain goes with it as well. It's not all straight ahead and roses. And there's a time lag and that sort of thing. That's very important to understand, is that we all want to be Gabe Brown tomorrow. Gabe Brown took 20 years to get into where Gabe Brown's at, you know? So as much as I'd love to tell you it can all happen tomorrow, it's not going to. And you've got to get that, you've got to get the mind shift, and it's in your head. And then you've got to have the courage to get out there and have a crack. And you're going to have a few stuff ups. But the thing is, with every stuff up, you've got to take a lesson, you know? That's where it is. The fantastic thing about my guys that I work with is they're all observers. They're all watching stuff. So like Paul Clanty the other day, I was talking to him. Oh, hang on. I want to back up because there was something come to me. It's got to start in the head. But what I was doing with Helen all those times when we're sitting there on the header, driving the header, when we got time to, you know, to have a chat, is what it was all about. And I call it robust discussion, right? It wasn't me telling Helen all that I knew, and it wasn't Helen telling me all that she knew. It was we were having a discussion, and we were helping each other grow and build. So by the time we left the discussion, and you can't have a robust discussion in 2 minutes, right? Robust discussions, you've got actually, it was funny one the other day. I was talking to one of my guys, Darren Mudford, and when I hung it up, it was 1 hour and 1 second. So I took it Regen 101. So, you know, that's the cool stuff about it. And discussion, very good to have big discussions. And if you can find other people who are on the same page as you, that's really cracks on. I know that with my guys, they don't necessarily talk to each other, but they all talk to me, and I talk to all of them, and we've really sharing some knowledge and some ability and experience, and it's really cool.
Yeah, Martin, and I mean, I was just taking it back to the gardener too. A lot of gardeners say, oh, well, I don't like weeds. What do I do with my weeds? And it's the same story. You say, well, just leave them, or just cut them off, or pull them out and leave them where they are. They're all telling you what's missing in your soil. They've got a function. It is so hard for people to leave a weed in a suburban garden.
Yeah, well, with Paul Clanty, I was talking to him the other day about, and we're having a robust discussion, and he's had one paddock there that he harvested a big crop off it last year, so almost 12 months ago. And then he left it, and we had a pretty big summer here, and a lot of grass, just native summer grass, grew on that paddock. Anyway, because that grew, and he didn't graze it because he didn't have to, he had enough feed other places or whatever, and he just let that grass grow up. But then coming off the summer, he didn't quite, because he hadn't conserved the moisture, and he'd used it, but he'd grown plants, then he didn't have the moisture there. So if this winter was a little bit drier, he didn't have that moisture to rely on because he'd already used it for his winter crop. Anyway, he hasn't grown a winter crop there, but we've had a reasonable season, but all that cover that he had on it, and all those roots that were down into it let all this winter moisture into that paddock. And he said, you can't drive across it because you'll get bogged. There is that much moisture in there. And what he's saying is that what's gone on with that full cover and all those roots, he said, you dig that up and it's just soil, right? So he's built soil in one rest period where he's had plenty of moisture and good cover. And he said, you know, the crazy thing is I've built soil and I've done nothing.
Yeah.
Right? He didn't apply anything. He didn't run over it with anything burning diesel or bloody disturbing the ground or anything. He just left it be. And nature, so no, he hasn't taken any money off of that for this season, but he's got a paddock of soil out there.
Yeah.
And so then, because he's got a full profile of moisture in there and cover, is it won't be very much longer, and we'll plant we'll plant summer mixed species into that. So that'll be sorghums and cowpeas and all that sort of thing. So it will grow something, absolutely, because there's moisture under it. And if we end up with a shower of rain around Christmas time or something, we'll usually get one to piss you off at harvest time. So when we get that shower of rain, that'll grow more feed. But even if he doesn't get any summer rain, he'll grow something, then ground cover, and he'll have a big paddock of feed, you know. So, but the thing is too, is he could overgraze that and head into the winter next year with a complete disaster again. So you can, once you've fixed stuff up, you've got to be careful that you don't go and stuff it up again. You've got to maintain the cover and maintain the plants and maintain the diversity and keep the sunlight coming into the plants, building the soil.
But you brought up a thing there, which has been a myth for a long time, that you can't rebuild soil. You'll get a centimetre of soil bought in 100 years or something. We all know that is just a furphy, but they're still saying it. And we've seen, you just said, he grew his soil in one season.
Yeah, but the thing is he, right, and this is, and that's one thing I'm always banging on about, is you got to look at it left and right, right to left, inside out and upside down. You have to analyze it from all sorts of different directions so that you get a good handle on what is going on. You don't just run along and think the first thing you come up with was it, because there's always more than one thing. You know, it's never one thing, always the combination.
Yeah.
So with the building the soil, and the plants were what built the soil, and because he did nothing, right? So he didn't upset the diversity, he didn't upset the life cycle, all those sort of things, right? And that's what we do all the time, is nature's trying to get somewhere, and we come in halfway through it and poof.
Yeah.
Shut it down.
Wasn't it? Very exciting.
So those boys over in the States that do the no-till organic, right? And if you Google that, you'll find them straight up. The two guys, no-till organic, and it's through that green cover seeds. But what happens with those two guys is that they bounce ideas off each other. They work as a team to get the thinking, right? Yeah. And then they do the watching. But what happens there is there's a very fine line. They call it terminate. But when they terminate their cover crop to plant their cash crop, there's a very fine line, and it's only like a couple of days can mean you double your biomass, right? So if you were 2 days early, you only got half as much biomass to break down in that as you need. So these sort of things, that's where this record keeping and that sort of thing goes. But that's a pretty cool story, those two boys over there. But I still wonder why, and the thing that we're doing here that's different to anybody else that they're doing is we're growing these mixed species cash crops. Mixed species cash crops. That is gold, what our guys are doing there, because there's monoculture crops are just fraught with danger and hard bloody work. Yeah. So if you want to live in fear and work hard, grow monoculture crops, easy.
Yeah.
You know?
Biodiversity, there's the principle. So thanks.
Diversity. And what's that one I always say? It's carbon and diversity, right? And if you want it to be difficult, it's carbon, 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 diversity, diversity, diversity. You know, if you like to really make it hard for yourself.
And there's a lot of money for people harvesting native seeds and things like that. You know, like how easy is it to start allowing those native grasses to come through? They're very, very lucrative. You know,
out at Darren's farm, he just bought another little block, but it hasn't been grazed for a fair while, and he's just tidying that up now. But that's got our summer grasses. If you give them a bit of rest and let them be and manage them, they come back into this country lickety split. Like
yeah.
And well, you don't have to plant.
Yeah, when we were starting and we were talking about native grasses, everyone we spoke to in Western Australia said, "Oh no, we don't have native grasses here." Everyone. And I thought, that can't be right. I mean, you can't tell me a whole state has no native grasses. Anyway, of course they do. But people just were so far removed from allowing nature and working with nature.
Yeah.
So there you go. Anyway, we're probably...
Right, anyway, I didn't mean to hijack your whole show, but you guys, I love you both, and you've done a lot for me over time, and I very, very much appreciate it.
Thank you,
Martin.
Thank you, Martin.
For saying what you've said. There's a lot of gold in what you said.
Yeah, we love you too.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's...
Back to Ray.
So Irene and John have a question. They raised their hand, I believe.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's not a question, but it's just wonderful to see you, Helen and Hugo. It's a long time. I remember when you had the store in Lilydale.
Oh, wow. Wow, were you one of our customers?
Obviously.
Oh, you've accidentally gone on mute again. I'm not sure what happened. Just, unmute. Yeah, perfect.
We will also know you from the landmark courses that we had done years ago.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes. Yeah, well, that was a huge project. And for people listening, it's just getting back to finding out who you really are. And I did do my first film of Pat Colby was a project from Landmark, and I'd been too scared to approach this guru to do some filming. So, but I really wanted to, and thank goodness we did, because now we have a record of Pat. So, yeah.
Irene, thanks for bringing up Landmark, because Landmark was, you can look at it many different ways. It was a bit like check your thinking, question your own thinking. And they said, and they looked at what drove people, what drove humanity, and one of the key things that drove humanity was contribution. And it didn't, and as I said, it didn't matter whether you're a cleaner or a professor. Contributing to mankind or contributing to someone else is a very big thing, and it's a very powerful thing. Contribution.
So Landmark Education still runs. It's a fantastic organisation if you actually want to. And one of the reasons I did it, I wanted to use this brain more, and I was told, oh, well, that'll help you use your brain more. I had no idea I was going in for a self-development program, but boy, it's totally changed our lives and a number of other people. So thank you. Oh, well, thank you for speaking up, because that's a long time ago.
It's got to be a mindset change for humanity. It's got to be a recheck on how we, our egos, or call it whatever you like. There's got to be a recheck on how we're conducting ourselves.
And it's all a compound effect, you might think it's a small program or a weekend course or a virtual classroom, but it all compounds, and there's been some really nice comments in the chat as well. Everyone thanking you for doing what you're doing and Megan says it should be lost without all our hard work or all your hard work that I get to jump on and keep amplifying. And I do love the robust conversation. My marketing brain went, oh, there's another R word. It's the Regen Robust Roundtable. You know, or maybe we need to rename the classroom. That's how my brain ticks. You know, so awesome. And thanks for everyone for sharing. We might wrap things up. We've got about 15 more minutes before we kind of head off to the 90-minute mark. But I just want to maybe call someone else out to say what's been a bit of a takeaway for today. Megan, I might throw over to you on the spot if you don't mind. What's something that stood out for today in the virtual classroom?
Well, yeah, literally just hearing Helen and Hugo's passion. I've been privileged to have a conversation with Hugo before, and the knowledge that both of them have is absolutely brilliant. It is passionate to listen to them talk, and it does keep me going. Because literally no one around here is doing any of this. You speak to anyone saying, I want to go natural and all of that, and it's so expensive. I tried that. I didn't get the yields. And it's like, then I went back to chemicals, and it's sort of like, okay, don't listen to them, ignore them, just keep going with your gut and just figure it out on your own. And it's sort of like having this group is brilliant. It's been fantastic to be able to listen to others and sort of go, okay, do it this way, follow these steps, sort of see what works for you, and try to work out a way. So listening to you too, it's been a privilege. So
Thank you.
And Megan, you're going to have to be that example in your area, so that way others don't say there's no one out here doing it. You'll be the one doing it. The shining light.
I had a conversation with someone a couple of months ago about it. It's like, there's no one around. She goes, I know, like we're only a 6-acre farm, but it's sort of no one's doing it bigger scale. And it's like, I wish there was. So
You'll be right.
Once I sort of get into doing it, and
I acknowledge what you're doing. It's fantastic.
Now, Megan, there's a key words in what you just said: work out a way, or just get going.
That's it. And it's different for everyone, and that's what everyone, different climates, different ecological systems, and sort of it is all different for everyone. And as you said, there is no silver bullet. You've got to work out your own sort of way and what works and what you're comfortable with. So,
Love it. Irene, I noticed you unmuted yourself. Did you want to say something?
I've kind of thought, will I say this or not? But we're in Seymour, and we've just got this house block, but we also have my son has a business called Permaculture Principles, and he's got a warehouse on our property here. And so we have about 300 different titles of books and things that are available that might support people if they're looking for those kind of things. His business is called Permaculture Principles. I just thought, not like promoting his business, but
to make people aware. Can you send the link in then for Ray or Bella?
I can.
I really
awesome.
It's clear that we've got to work together. It's too big to be having our egos get in the way, and sort of, naturally we've got to have ego and got to have pride, but we've just got to work together because otherwise nature will win and humanity won't.
My nature winning.
No, so that's what I said. Nature will win.
Yeah, that's right. I thought you were.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We might also, and thanks for sharing that. We love links, and like what Hugo says, when we all work together, that is where we amplify everything. There is, nature. It works together, in a very nice way, and we need to do the same. The more we mirror that, the more we're going to rise this tide and all benefit from it. Julie, I've seen you smiling and nodding your head. A key takeaway from today? Do you want to unmute and share a little takeaway?
Well, I don't have property to, pour like that into, but it's just really inspiring, and I really align with the principles. And I love to hear what people are willing to put in and what lengths they will go to stay the course, really. So, yeah, I'm here for the inspiration, and it's not like I will never do it. It's interesting because I've recently come to a rural area in South Australia, and I started growing vegetables, and that was my first experience. I always related to myself as a non-gardener. Like, I used to get nervous if people would ask me to look after their pot plants. And so I had a crack, and they just went off, and I didn't put anything on them. And the soil is river sand. And it just delighted me that they were so generous. And yeah, we had a really good time. But interestingly, since I've been here, there's a lot of cropping. It's a very intensive horticulture area. So lots of, monocultures of grapes or almond trees or, fill in the blank. I've actually developed an allergy to soil, to aspergillus, which is and being told that I should stay out of the garden. Now, years and years ago, that wouldn't have been like, oh no, but now I'm like, oh, what? And I suspect it's the area. I suspect it's all the cropping. Oh, not the cropping per se, but all the chemicals and the processes. And we live right on the Murray River, and it always there's a bit sad about that. Mm. Because the area is being forced, or it seems to me, someone who knows like zip nada, it seems like it's being forced to do something, but the land is being forced, and we get massive dust storms. Yeah, because they're left open, like paddocks that are just, you can see them leaving and going whichever direction they're heading. And that's really sad. And I'm actually looking at having to leave. I've been going to head back to Victoria because that's where I'm from. And Hugo and Helen, I spent quite a bit of time in Seville. So yep. It's like, oh yeah, I remember that. And yeah, but due to borders, etc., just to see if it will make a difference. Yeah, yeah. And you would experience the fact, like we all do, you drive around, the paddocks are bare, totally lifeless, and yet on the roadside there's all these grasses and quite thriving vegetation. That's quite often the fact, Well, we've planted a whole heap, like I'm actually on a block with my partner, and who's been here forever, but he's from that culture, because farmers were given properties way back eons ago after the war. But there were some orange trees on this property, and they've been since taken out. We've put in heaps and heaps of natives, and we just let the grasses grow and we let the weeds grow. And the trees are doing really well. They just pop up everywhere now. Yeah. Like, we didn't plant that tree. It's so, yeah, it's pretty thrilling. Yeah, and it's going to be more and more important that each and every one of us grows our own food in as much as we can to be sustainable. Yes, that's it. And thank you so much for the inspiration, all of you. Thanks. Excellent. Yeah, you're welcome. Great. Thanks, Ray. You're probably saying, "Oh, what did I unmute it?" No. It's this is the reason why I hang out so much and keep digging deeper in this space, because it is inspiration. It is, it's just very heart filling and great. Great cause to be behind. And I want to live in a world where this isn't something we need to work towards. This is just the new normal. And so it is nice to hear your words. And what I really find interesting, Julie, is that there are more and more people who are coming into our Facebook group, or who are becoming really
enthusiastic about soil and soil health that aren't farmers and aren't access to land and are growing and becoming curious. And I find that as a marketer, that's an interesting signal for me, because there just seems to be this kind of natural curiosity that people are getting more interested in this. And that is where real change is going to happen, because the knowledge you're learning in this space, you get to go and make better buying decisions, and you're voting with your wallet, and you're, maybe potentially thinking that you need to move. Like, that's a big life decision because of the stuff that's happening around you. And being consciously aware of that is really, really interesting from my point of view. I've got friends who I would never in a million years think that they would come to me and say, hey, I see you doing this soil stuff. I watched a documentary on Netflix. Like, tell me more. What are you doing? Like, you seem ahead of the herd with this movement. And I feel like I'm late to the party. Imagine, that's what I love with like Helen and Hugo. They've been early adopters, recording stuff onto DVD, early adopters, using email automation, early adopters, putting a membership website together, going and recording content before video content was even embraced on the internet. Everything's always been an early adopter signal. And I feel like the next trend is people who don't have access to land, who want to learn how the soil works so they know where their food is coming from. And for me, that's going to create real change. I often say, and I've said this on the podcast and on other things, is that we don't need to certify or verify the farmers. We need to certify the consumers and make people conscious consumers to buy better food. And that will create a real big movement. And the power of the people. A post on Instagram this morning where Airbnb is allowing 20,000 Airbnb hosts to house Afghanistan refugees. That's the power of people coming together and solving problems that our government just don't give a shit about. And it makes me angry, and I get super passionate about it. And I really feel like we're at that tipping point where people are realizing that if we come together, we are more than them, and we are more powerful, and we can make the change that we want to see and seek. So I get just as inspired knowing that you are learning soil and applying that in your own backyard, because that's where real change happens. I see people say, schools should have a community garden. No, you should have a garden in your own home. Don't outsource it to the schools to solve your kids' problems. It starts in your own backyard. And so I'm blessed that you come along and you find this inspiring. And this is what we need to see more of, is you don't need to be a farmer. That's one of the reasons why we moved to Soil Learning Centre, is because we felt that farming secrets came with this connotation that you needed to be a farmer. And we wanted to break that pattern a little bit and say, no, come and hang out in the Soil Learning Centre and just learn all things that's really fun about soil. It doesn't matter if you're a farmer, a grower, an eater, or a foodie. Doesn't matter your age. That's what's really inspiring to me. So,
and
yes,
I think we should just finish the last little bit of our story with meeting you. And we are so blessed to have you, because Ray's now joined us in a group, a business, and he is our successor. We feel so blessed that you're now in the team and going to continue this work, and you're just so insatiable. Your curiosity is taking you everywhere. And you started saying, I don't know this, I don't know that, and everything else. Well, boy, you have gone out and you've killed it, right?
Thank you.
You're doing courses, traveling, reaching out to anyone and everyone to understand more about this whole, it's really about food and everything in the long run, but it is about getting this all going and understanding that, so you can support people like we do with our filming. You're now bringing out your podcasts, which I heard the first bit last night, and I congratulate you because it's very exciting. So I don't know whether Bella's put a link in there, but everyone should have a link to Regen Ray's Soil Lovers podcast. It's just great. I really great. I had it in the kitchen while I was doing a bit of cooking. It was so absorbing. So thank you. We just want to acknowledge you publicly, because we often say privately.
We do.
Yeah, how blessed we are that you are holding the baton, carrying the flag, whatever the word is. And we know that farming secrets and what we started to achieve will continue, and it's so important. So thank you.
No worries.
So much.
It's easy when it's around great people. So.
I know.
Ray,
you meet fabulous people.
Ray, another good thing is this, that when you do a course at a university or something, that's good, that's okay. We need people who are qualified. But going across boundaries is actually paramount, where farmers can sort of think, well, okay, my weeds are not weeds. I can have all these different crops, as Martin was saying. He's now stripping crops with 4 different seeds in them. And not only that, he's got a situation where there's feed in the paddock for the sheep after it's been stripped.
So many things, exciting.
Going across boundaries, and someone like you who's sort of come in sort of cold, or well, come in, shouldn't say cold, because you had your own farm and your parents are very keen gardeners. Going across boundaries like what you've just done more recently, it's very good, and
fabulous.
Exposing that information to our community.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And it was, I would say I did come in cold, because I never realised the upbringing that I had. Like, I didn't give that credit. It wasn't until the paradigm shift changed that I could look back and go, wow, that now I can join those dots, and it really, this process of coming through Farming Secrets as like a marketing consultant, a few hours a week, to like becoming a succession plan and launching a podcast and basically rebranding myself to Regen Ray and going and basically doing this as my life work is been a very easy decision because of the years and years of compounding work. And I see it as common sense, and I know we're in a room where people see this and get it. It's the next level, in permaculture, that, zone 2, 3, and 4, and 5 that we need to keep rippling out to. And that's why doing the podcast and being able to have conversations with all different type of people, hanging out in these classrooms, it's just really, I say this, get a bit emotional, but the podcast has helped me through COVID. I got to have conversations with people who are change makers, healing the world. It's filled my cup up. I've got friends who are losing jobs, who can't make ends meet, and I get to sit on a podcast and speak to people on the other side of the world for an hour and then share that with everyone as a bit of a gift to the world. Like, it's kept me sane, it's kept me alive, it's kept me curious. I've got to hang out on Zoom calls and look at soil in microscopes through a Zoom call, and that is a true blessing. And I'm very grateful to have crossed paths with you two as well. So, it is all heart. And I love hanging out in this community. And I feel like after many years of trying to find my tribe, I found it, and I was one of those entrepreneurs that was always this business, that business, this idea is always around sustainability. But then I discovered regeneration, and that, regenerative, and that took it to the next level, and one of the things that I've had a bit of a distinction with the podcast is that I always was on a mission to save the world, and the world will save itself. The world heals itself. It's the humans, it's the civilization, it's the custodians that needs to be healed and changed, because it's the way that we treat the planet and getting in the way, and so David Attenborough's witness statement on Netflix is a testament to that, when he goes to Chernobyl and all there is life, but it's greenery life, it's trees taking over, it's vines growing through the concrete jungles, a place where humans couldn't go, wildlife and animals have come back. And so that's an example of even in a toxic area, if humans get out of the way, the planet will be okay. We just need to work better on this planet. And so, my kind of thought now is we can outsource the problem and say we have a climate crisis, or we can actually bring the onus back to ourselves. And so, no, we have a citizen crisis. It's the way that we live that is the problem. Let's stop outsourcing it to the climate and say someone else has got this. Let's wait for regulations. I don't buy into that as much anymore. It's like we need to look internal and see how we treat ourselves, our micro ecosystems and our macro ecosystems. And that is where real change will come. So I'm excited. Thank you so much for coming in and hanging out with us today. We've gone over time, but really, really worth it. So thank you so much, everyone, for your kind words. And I'm really loving all the feedback on the podcast. And, go in there on the Soil Learning Centre. Gerhard mentioned about the Halston regenerative group, and he's shared a link in the Facebook. We went out and recorded their Regenerative Ag 101 course that is also in the Soil Learning Centre. So there's an abundance of information and groups and people that you can hang out with to make sure that we're all on the same page. So love that. Awesome. Okay. Thank you, Helen and Hugo, and everyone. Any final words from you guys?
Thank everyone on the call and all your communities for, you being part of them. It just keeps going. So it's been our pleasure.
Ray, I think I say this, the new currency's got to be family farmers producing toxin-free food and fibre, healthy food and fibre for a community that appreciates the farmer's effort.
Yeah, here. That should be your mantra for the 21-day challenge. You said that so beautifully and naturally. Awesome. Good stuff. All right. 100% Hugo is what Jordan says. Well, thank you, everyone. Really love hanging out with you all. Make sure that you keep spreading this great word. Get out there, keep digging deeper into our wonderful world of soils. See you next time.
Bye. Thank you.